All right, today we're going to be talking about some algebraic proofs in section 5.4. If we remember in our previous section, 5.3, we did some of these kind of one-step proofs where we just said we're using one property, whether it's the addition property, subtraction, division, or multiplication, to kind of explain something that was happening in an equation. We learned about some more of these properties: substitution, transitive, distributive, and congruence. And these are going to kind of come into play as the unit goes on, but today we're going to be mostly worried about these first four. And these problems that we're going to be working on are really going to be very familiar. All we're going to be doing is adding in this statement and reason box to kind of explain what we're doing as we are doing it. So before we get started, some things that we always know are true about a proof, and there's two really big things. The first is that they start with given. This is really important because this given statement is something that is always going to be true with your proofs. It's what you start with. And they start with the given, and they're going to end with whatever you're trying to prove. So end with your prove statement. And for all the proofs we're going to do all year long, they're always going to be using these statement and reason boxes. You don't need a statement and reason box to do a proof. This is just a really great way to keep it nice and organized and makes it easier to go back and see what's really going on. If we look at number one here, before I really worry about the statement and reason box, first thing I want to say is we have this given here. Again, the given is what you're starting with. And our given is 2x minus 4 equals 10. This is a linear equation. We've solved these before, and I want to solve this really quick just to kind of have a starting point. So if I have 2x minus 4, and I want to solve for x, it's only going to take us a couple steps. We need to add 4 to both sides to get 2x equals 14, and then divide both sides by 2 to be left with x equals 7. And that's our answer, x equals 7. And if we look up here at our proof statement, look at that, boom, x equals 7. That's exactly what we were trying to get. Now what we need to do is we need to take all this work that we just did, all of these steps, and find a way to move them over to our statement and reason. And what this is going to be is just kind of explaining why we did what we did. So first thing we always do is we start with our given right up here. Our given in this equation is just 2x minus 4 equals 10. And your reason is given. And then I always like to write down my proof statement as well. So we're trying to prove that x equals 7. Now let's go back and see how we solved. We started with 2x minus 4 equals 10. That was what we started with. Step number 1 was adding 4 to both sides. That's the first thing we did. And what that left us with was 2x equals 14. So after we added 4 to both sides, we got left with 2x equals 14. And we got there through addition. We don't just want to say adding or addition, though. We want to use those properties that we learned about. So I'm going to say the addition property of equality. The addition property of equality. Next thing we did, our step 2, was we divided both sides by 2. And that gave us x equals 7. So to go from here to here, we divided by 2, meaning we used the division property of equality. So with working out these proofs, these algebraic proofs, our job really is just to solve our equation just like normal, and then use these statement and reasons to kind of fill out what we did. Next question over here, our given is negative 3x plus 16 equals 31. If we wanted to solve this, it's going to be very similar to our previous question. We would subtract 16 on both sides to get negative 3x equals 15. and then we would divide both sides by -3 to get x equals -5. And again, our proof statement's telling us that x equals -5, so we know we got the right answer right off the bat. Before we fill in our statement and reason, first thing we always do is write out our given and our proof. So our given in this equation was -3x plus 16 equals 31, given. And our proof statement is x equals -5. Getting into the habit of doing this now is really important. So when we work on trickier proofs, more proofs with more steps, we kind of have a starting point. Now going back through this, we can see that we started with our given, and the first thing that we did is we subtracted 16 on both sides, and that got us to -3x equals 15. And we used the subtraction property of equality to get there. Subtraction. And then after we subtracted, all we had to do was divide both sides by -3 to get x equals -5. So that last step was the division property of equality. Moving down to number 3, our equation has a little bit more going on, but that really isn't anything for us to worry about. We can still solve this equation just like normal. And I'm actually going to forego doing it on the left side here. Let's see if we can do this whole question just in our statement and reason boxes and see if that'll get us there. So first thing we need to do, write out our given. 3x plus 2x minus 11 equals 14. And we're trying to prove that x equals 5. Looking at kind of my starting equation here, I can see there's a couple different ways to start this. There's more than one ways to correctly do this proof, but I want to simplify this really quickly by combining my like terms, 3x and my 2x together. And if I combine this 3x and the 2x, that'll give me 5x minus 11 equals 14. Our reason here, and this kind of might sound self-explanatory, but we're actually not going to be using the addition property of equality. You use the addition when you move from the left side to the right side of the equation. Here we just combined like terms, so our reason is just combine like terms. The real property is a little bit more confusing than just combining like terms. It has to do with distributing and all this other stuff. So for us, just combining like terms is fine. Now all we need to do is move this minus 11 to both sides, which we would do by adding 11. That would give me 5x equals 25 because we use the addition property. Property of equality. And then the last thing we have to do, divide both sides by 5, and 25 divided by 5 does equal 5, so we know we did this problem right, and we finished it off using the division property. So even though it can really help to work these problems out before you do the proof, if you feel really confident about your solving skills, you don't have to. You can do it all inside the statement and reason box. It's up to you of how you want to tackle these. If you would have flipped a couple of these around, like if you would have done the adding step instead of the combining step first, that would have also given you the correct answer. Either way works just fine. Flipping over to the back, we have a couple more problems here. And again, there's going to be a lot of different ways to do these problems. Starting off with my given, I have 5x minus 18 equals 3x plus 2. That's my given. Now to solve this, we have, there's 4 different ways to correctly do this problem. I'm a big fan of always moving one of my x's from the right side to the left side or vice versa, just to get them all together. So I'm going to get rid of this 3x first, minus 3x on both sides. What this gives us is 2x minus 18 equals positive 2. and we got that through subtracting, so subtraction property of equality. Now we just need to kind of proceed like normal to get this x by itself. So I need to add 18 to both sides, plus 18. That gives me 2x equals 20 by adding. And then we can see, I did forget to write down my last step here, my prove statement, but we can still double check that it matches up. We want to prove that x equals 10, and if I divide both sides by 2, that is what I'm left with, is x equals 10 through the division property of equality. Last one here, number 5, gives us 6 times x plus 2 equals negative 6. We have one kind of new thing here, and that is we have to distribute. Again, there's more than one way to do this question, but distributing is probably going to be the best. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, though, let's write down our given. 6 times x plus 2 equals negative 6 is our given. And we're trying to prove that x equals negative 3. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this 6 or simplify a little bit by distributing across. So when I multiply my 6 across, I'm left with 6x plus 12 equals negative 6. And this is actually a property that we learned in our previous page. We had there it is, distributive property of equality. That is one that we can use. So our reason here will be distributive property of equality. Now, if we continue solving like we're used to, we would get rid of this plus 12 by subtracting 12 on both sides, which would leave me with 6x equals negative 18 because we subtracted 12, so subtraction property of equality. And then finally, we would get that x by itself by dividing both sides by 6 to give us x equals negative 3. So our last step would be the division property of equality. All right, that is going to be all that we have for section 5.4. Hope you have a great